Let's talk about it. Is Milwaukee a contender or pretender? Because to me, I might lean pretender just just off Doc Rivers and it being year one of Dame. I might lean pretender. Brook Lopez don't look like he has chemistry with them either. That's making me lean pretender. Chris Middleton ain't what Chris Middleton used to be. Still a good team. I feel like everybody always talks negative on them, and they're still a good team. But I'm leaning pretender.
It's it's tough. I mean, when you have your head coach coming out and saying, "Why are you guys considering me for the job?" essentially, not a good sign. Not a great sign when you're a team that currently has one of the best players in the world and is no doubt still trying to compete for a title year in, year out. You just made your buy-in move for Dame. Like, not exactly a good sign for what's going on at the head coaching position. Hasn't been all year, and it's not looking like it's getting any better with the history of Doc and what he's been saying and bringing in over the last couple of weeks. That being said, they still have Giannis, and that's enough for me, just based on the surrounding talent being fine. Now, do I think there are as much favorites to be contenders as I would have thought they would have been 3, 4 months ago? Definitely not. I think they are more on a tier two contender side than they are a favorite at this point. Now, I still think there's room for improvement. Doc is the primary concern for me right now, but Dame hasn't been great. I still think there's some room for improvement there. Part of it's chemistry, part of it's just the 3 point shot hasn't been falling. Maybe that doesn't come back, but I find it hard to imagine he really continues to struggle as much as he has. You mentioned Middleton, Gabe. The production hasn't been there as much. The hopeful thing for me is that he's still been very efficient. It's been one of his more efficient years over the last couple of years since he's been struggling with these injuries. Obviously, some of those numbers are down as well because he was on that minutes restriction for so much at the start of the year. So I'm willing to hope that he has some amount of a rise in production towards the back half of the year in the postseason. And again, he doesn't have to necessarily be the second option like he was when they won the title offensively. He can be the third guy now in theory, assuming Dame continues to pick it up a little bit more and be more of that second option. Defensively, there's still questions. It's not as horrific as it was to start the year, but nowhere near this top 5 unit that we've been continuing to expect from them over the last few years. Of course, Jrue Holiday being gone is a big part of that, but like the personnel should still be there for them to be better than they've been. And as we've just mentioned, I mean, Doc Rivers just hasn't seemingly been the guy. So I have a lot of questions. I don't have them penciled in as favorites. If you had to have me pick a team today, I don't think they're my team to get out of the East, but I think they still have a chance, and Giannis is the biggest reason for that.
I see Gabe's point, but I'm with Dev too. Like I think I tweeted earlier, like tier two contenders, they're that for me. Um, it, it's hard to like ignore like the fact that any series they go into, they got the best player, and we like you said, Dev, like we expect Dame to get better than what he has been. He's been shooting really bad, which is not Damian Lillard like when he's a healthy Damian Lillard. Like that's just not him. So you expect that to get better. For me, man, it's just the continuity is just not there, which we've seen for this team routinely over like the last 3 years or so. The continuity has been there consistently. They always would have their identity on both ends of the floor, and they would stick to it. And I think this goes back to the conversation we had earlier about them being maybe the worst organization like that's in the Eastern Conference playoffs right now. It's the fact that you've gone through 3 head coaches in not even a year. It was like what 6, 7 months or so. Like you went through 3 head coaches, and I probably would be more confident in this team if they just stuck with Joe Prutney. He's been on that bench for quite some time now. I might have been more confident if they just stuck with that. But I hate teams that go midseason and hire a new coach and commit to them long term. And I especially hate it when it's Doc Rivers. He's somebody that I just personally just don't trust in the playoffs. Like when you get into these big series, I'm not going to trust him to make the right calls from the sideline. And I don't think Giannis and Dame will be great enough in year one together to trump that. I can't see it. The defense, it's improved slightly under Doc, but how good is it going to be once we get to the postseason? Are they going to be able to stop Jalen Brunson in this series, who torches good defenses? Played great against Miami last year. Played pretty good against the Cavs last year in the first round too. How are they going to be able to stop, those types of guards? What answers would they have for a Boston? The way Cleveland's playing, if they go into the postseason and match up with them. Indiana, I know this would be their first year, but they got smoked from Milwaukee so far in this regular season. They're going to be a team that's playing that mentality of nothing to lose. They're going to still be trying to be up and down, put up points. I'm just really curious to see how this team defensively answers those challenges. And I'm going to give them 10 more games. Give them 10 more games. If it improves, that'll kind of, I'll stand firm on them being in that tier 2, which Boston, the clear favorite, I think, out east. But out of the teams in the rest of the pack, I would probably take the Bucks. If these next 10 games are similar to the first 10 games, I'm going to have a lot of questions, and I might be like saying some things like the Knicks could probably beat them in the series. Cleveland might be able to beat them in the series. And it's going to be a lot of question marks. And, like you said, Dev, like Doc going on this tour, this media tour, saying like, why, I don't know why they would hire me. Like that's so unserious, man. It just goes to show me like, why should I take this guy serious if he's trying to be the head coach of a championship team when he clearly doesn't think he's right for the job? I don't know, man. We'll see. But it's been the last month or so has been a mess for this Bucks organization. And maybe Giannis, who's been incredible this season, is good enough to trump all that. But I'll have to see it with my own eyes before I can believe it.
Rant.
Thank you.
That was good. That was really good. Yeah, when you look at a team and when you're closer to being a bottom 10 defense than you are to being like even like top half, it's just not. It's just that doesn't feel like a championship team right there. Every team at this point usually has pretty solid offense if you're even like a competitive playoff team, but you still need a good defense to get the job done and win a championship. And they don't got that.
Yeah, it's tough. I feel like the spectrum is switching a little bit in that regard. Not to say you can have a bad defense. Like I don't think you can be Pacers level of bad with an elite offense. You still need to have some amount of a defense, specifically to the point where like if you need to get stops and lock in for 4 to 5 minutes, can you do that in the playoffs? I think Milwaukee has the potential to be able to do that. That's enough in today's day and age if your offense is good enough. Now, in past years, we very much know Milwaukee's offense has not been good enough to do that because the role players do not know how to hit a 3 in the playoffs. That's going to be a concern again this year. Hopefully, they just have enough shooting in that to be able to make that adjustment that they can focus more on their offense. Dame being in town, how much does that help? Malik Beasley being the biggest addition from a role player standpoint. We know he's been shooting the ball very well now that he's got out of LA and got that role player voodoo that seems to have on every role player in LA. Maybe that's enough. But there's definitely still a lot of questions, to say the least. Certainly a lot more questions than I thought we were going to have, and different questions than I thought we were going to have from a Milwaukee team that added Dame during the offseason.
Yeah, for me, the biggest question I had after like the trades and stuff was going to be that backcourt defense. But it's like you said, it's extended past that, like to things that nobody saw happening. And who would have known that we'd be in February, towards the end of February, and they'd be on Doc Rivers as head coach? Like that's just not something you expect to see from a contending team. So if they somehow figure it out and win it all, we got to have some serious conversations about Giannis being like a top 10 player ever. Like that's how like insane it would be in my book if they like won it all the way that they've been, the state that the team has been. But yeah,
they got to start playing their best ball soon because 3-7 in their last 10 with New York on their heels. They need the 3 seed because
and the Knicks are getting healthy.
If you're 4 or 5, you're not making the conference finals. I'm sorry.
If you have to see Boston in that second round, even if you got out of that series, that's war, and you don't want that war in the second round.
Like that's bad news. So they gotta they got to ramp it up now. Like you talk 10 more games, they probably do have 10 more games because if they're not looking good in the next 10 games, that means they're probably not the 3 seed anymore, and that's real bad news. That to me, if they do not stay a top 3 seed, they're not a contender because if they have to face Boston in the second round, they're not winning the championship.
And that doesn't even include the potential as if by some stroke of luck Embiid's back for a 4v5 series in the first round. I mean, like
You don't want that.
You just don't need to be dealing with that if you're about to make a title run.
And
you have Doc this time, don't go up 3-2. You go up 3-2 Doc, you're screwed.
And God bless Embiid, but if he comes back, if he gets back before playoffs, the hope would be, he already went through his injury, his playoff injury, right? So he just sat out like 2.5 months or whatever. So that's bad news, man. That's bad news. And Embiid usually has smoke for the Bucks, be honest. So seeing them match up in the playoffs in the first round, you don't want that. And I don't want – look, I think Bud can coach circles around – or not Bud, Nick Nurse can coach circles around Doc Rivers in the playoffs. And
this is the last thing I'm going to say, too. Round 1, even if they're 3, Miami's only half a game back of the 6th seed.
And look, Doc doesn't want
Jimmy's
that,
season just started.
Yeah, his season. Yep, playoff basketball's here for Jimmy, just like last year. Like they don't want that smoke, man. I'm sorry. Like their best bet, they better get the 2 seed and hope whoever's down there is maybe Indiana. I don't know, somebody that they think they can beat, Orlando, whoever it is.
Might be even the Atlanta. Trey might get him a game or 2.
Trey might get him a game or 2.
If I'm Milwaukee, I low key want Orlando because with Milwaukee's weakness being their defense, like Orlando's offense just ain't good. I don't want Miami because I've seen that go bad for Milwaukee too many times, and I don't want Indiana because
they got smoke for them.
If that Milwaukee defense is really suspect,
that's a 6-7 game series. Honestly,
you don't want
Definitely.
Indiana. You don't want Indiana. Because they're going to have those nights where if your defense is not on one in a playoff series,
they're putting up 140.
Yeah, that's what they're going to they're going to have at least a couple nights where they're going to shoot the lights out. It's going to be I would pick Milwaukee in probably 6, but those 2 games that Indiana wins, I think Indiana would take 2 games by 20 because they just have 2 nights where they just can't miss. But the other nights, Milwaukee would probably be in control. But they make it tough.
Tyrese will get whatever the hell he wants on the floor too. So that's an issue right there.
I want Orlando because I think they can deal with Orlando because Orlando's offense isn't good enough to expose their defense.
They can take Orlando. They can take them.
I think they're the only top 8 seed that's an easy matchup per se in the first round. I think everyone else can give most teams a series, Indiana and Miami included down there. But yeah, Orlando, their defense is good, but they're one of those teams where their good defense is not going to make up for it in the playoffs. I love Orlando, but they might get smacked in the playoffs. Their offense might really get exposed, especially if they get a team who's good on the defensive end. They might really get clamped up and get swept. But playoff experience, if they can get through the play and get a first round series, that's more than enough for them this year.
Let's just see Boston because they play great against Boston, so they might win a couple games.
That is true.